What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Saturday night, October 7th, 2023, about 9:53 p.m. here, California time. Latest activity, looks like some movement down here across the Middle America Trench. 3.9, or 2.9, excuse me, coming in to that area within the last 20 minutes or so. Let's go ahead and check out what's going on after a very busy earthquake morning and overnight, last night I should say. As far as newer large-scale movement goes, well, let's see what we got to start out here across the west coast. And there's not a whole lot of significant movement taking place out here. Little earthquake activity in a swarm out here around the Pope Valley. Now that is away from the Cobb Mountain area. This is where the Calpine hydrothermal operations take place there at the energy plants. Now this activity though is a ways away from there. Let me see what we got for the satellite view. Unless they've built some new facilities out here. I don't think so. There's quite a few dirt roads and whatnot leading back there, but either way, we got a little swarming going on for a total of 11 earthquakes here in the last couple hours. The largest so far looks to be a 2.5, about 4 kilometers deep. Just kind of watching that, these little separate swarms kicking up here. Not sure what fault system that's associated with. It could be this one right here, or it could be another one within the region. But we'll keep an eye on that. The Bay Area fairly quiet. The rest of Northern California up here pretty quiet as well. Southern California, a handful of smaller quakes. One earthquake down here in the Salton Sea. Well, there's two. I take that back. 1.9 and a 1.6 down there. This is actually right smack dab at the extreme southern edge of the San Andreas Fault, kind of where the extensional fault system of the Brawley seismic zone begins. You guys see that? A little interesting. So we'll watch that, see if a swarm kicks up there. If that's the case, that's going to be some scary stuff, because that's the plate boundary here that's very capable of producing an 8.1 magnitude earthquake, and it's been over 300 years since that southern branch has seen any significant movement like that. All right, Guatemala here within the last couple hours, it looks like 4.5. Looks like that's just offshore, 94 kilometers deep into the segment of the Middle America Trench. Had a 5.9 up there last night, a little bit further up into Mexico. So slight uptick here across the Middle America Trench region. As far as the Puerto Rico area goes, a handful of microquakes and a couple of threes in there as well. 1.3 over here around the Dominican Republic from earlier this afternoon, 3.9 to be exact. As far as the South America region goes, looks like the last earthquake here, 4.9 outside of Santiago, Chile area, 43 kilometers deep. Most of the broad scale activity has been, well, you guys can see it right here on the map further to the west, out here across the western areas of the Pacific Ring of Fire, and ways away from there as well, across the area of western Afghanistan, where they've seen some movement. Okay, so let's see what we got going on here across the Japan Trench and the Izu Trench here. The last earthquake here was up along the Kuril Islands area, the Kuril Kamchatka Trench, where we had seen a little bit of activity here over the last week. We'll pull up the last 7 days here. Most of this was from yesterday. Seen a handful of fours kicking up in that area. We had one today in that area. That's going to be that 4.8. Now the area here around the Izu Trench has completely come to a halt for the most part. The last one here was a 4.8, a little bit further upstream. Well, at least closer to the plate boundary, 4.8. 10 o'clock this morning. You guys remember all this activity, right? Quite a bit of swarming going on in the large-scale department, large magnitude activity here across the Izu Island, or Izu Trench, Volcano Islands area. That has come to a halt. And it has come to a halt following the further movement over here across Iran or Afghanistan, and the activity down in Papua New Guinea. Just came to a halt. So I don't know if it maybe relieved some pressure up here. It's possible. These things are like jigsaw puzzle pieces here, floating along and building up some strain. You got one area showing some movement, could affect some areas up here. It's just you move a piece of the puzzle and it will ultimately affect another piece of the puzzle. That's how it is. So we'll watch that, though, see if anything else kicks back up. It's kind of weird how it just pretty much came to a halt right around the time these earthquakes happen here. Okay, speaking of these earthquakes, a little bit of aftershock activity. 4.5, the latest one in this area. Of course, this region did see a 6.7, and then a couple minutes later, a 6.9 earthquake along this plate boundary. Now, that is around the Papua New Guinea area. It happened about 1 o'clock in the morning or so. Quite a few aftershocks following that activity. So that was at 1:40. And then we had some larger scale movement out here across the Afghanistan area late last night. 6.3 and a 6.3 and quite a few other earthquakes in there. Actually, this activity kind of struck up before the larger scale movement back here in Papua New Guinea. So two distinct locations, thousands of miles apart, but some large-scale activity taking place here. Still seeing some aftershock movement with the latest one, a 4.2 in this area of Afghanistan. It's rather odd to see earthquake activity specifically within this area of Afghanistan. I mean, I know there's some fault systems out here, mountain ranges and whatnot, but it's been a while. I don't recall ever seeing a 6-pointer out here. And if you look at the historical data, yeah, there's really not a lot specifically around this area. If you go outside the area, maybe 250 kilometers, 300 kilometers to the southwest, yes. But specifically in this area, not so much. So it's a little odd. A little bit of movement outside of Nepal as well. That's going to be a 5.0. That earthquake coming in late last night. I think we've seen some other activity here on the globe in that region. Maybe not. I don't see anything showing up there. Some activity across Turkey, it looks like, in the Mediterranean. The Atlantic Ocean is pretty calm and clear. Let's see what we got down here across the Tonga Trench area. This is starting to fill in slightly, 5.0. I'm really surprised that's all that's kicked up here. Because, well, if we look at the last 7 days, the magnitudes here in this area, the last one was about, a couple days ago on the 5th. You guys see that? So not a whole lot of activity has taken place here in this region in a couple days, but now we got a 5.0. Not for sure. I was expecting some larger scale movement, but with all this activity further up here, we'll have to see how this plays out. New Zealand still kind of just sitting down there in the mix. Let's go over here to the GeoNet servers and see what we have cooking across New Zealand. 2.4, 3 hours ago. 2.7, 10 hours ago. Doesn't look like there's a lot of activity here, folks, across the graphs. We'll check and see. There's some of those larger quakes there around Papua New Guinea that kicked up. Those are going to show up pretty nicely here. Those were, again, coming up on close to 24 hours ago. That did show up across the majority of the seismograph stations. So that is the signature that you see. As far as earthquake activity goes, a little bit of microquake aftershock movement here across this area of Rata Peaks. That's where that 6-pointer struck here a couple weeks ago back now, South Island area. There's that little earthquake there about 8 hours ago. I think that's going to be one of the 3s. South Island area. But for the most part, no large-scale movement there to report across New Zealand for now. We did see a little bit of advancement here across the Java Trench into the Andaman Sea throughout the last 24 hours. Nothing major going on. Just a handful of smaller quakes in that area. Excuse me. Alaska. Get a little cluttering up here around the Anchorage area. This region did see a 4-pointer here recently. Looks like quite a few 2s and 3s out there. In the meantime, just keep an eye on that area. It's shown some elevated movement here in the last couple days up around Anchorage. All right, the Big Island of Hawaii. Let's see what's happened out here. Looks as though, well, let's see here. We got a little bit of earthquake activity in the deeper regions here beneath the Kilauea volcano. Also some movement up here around this northeastern flank of Mauna Loa. Now these earthquakes here, relatively shallow, 2.4 magnitude for negative 1.7. Here's a 2.0, about a kilometer or so deep. Negative 1.8 for that 2.2, and a 4.3 kilometer deep, 1.8 magnitude. So a little bit of a noticeable uptick trending here across this area of Mauna Loa. Kilauea volcano, well, that's another one, right? We've been watching the earthquake swarm kick up, but it has dropped off dramatically along with sequence along with the activity here in Papua New Guinea and western Afghanistan. Could it be just coincidence? Well, this activity kicked up, this movement halted, along with the swarm over here. Been watching these two areas. I know they're thousands of miles away, but you know what goes on underneath here, underneath the lithosphere here. See if I can spit that out. There's a lot going on, I think, and got to pay attention to those areas when they key up like that. For now, it looks like there's a little bit of relief going on, but who knows how long that's going to last. So let's check out Kilauea volcano, see if there's any more newer activity. I was up at Mount Lassen today hiking a couple different trails with Missy Mimi's. A lot of stuff up there. Definitely still an active volcano up there at Mount Lassen. Seen quite a few of those bubbling water pots. I can't remember what they call them, but I'll upload a video here before I go to bed. A little short. Pretty neat. All right, and my legs are pretty tired. Kilauea daily update. See what we got here. The volcano is not erupting. Still showing signs of unrest. That's due to the earthquake activity. Ground deformation in the area just south of the summit leveled off around 2 a.m. Odd. About the same time we had all those large earthquakes, with no appreciable changes in the tilt since then. The inflation at the summit remains close to its highest levels in over 5 years and has nearly returned to the level just seen before the last eruption there back in early September of this year. So let's see what we got here for the tilt meters ourselves. Let's just go ahead and go check it out here at the Kilauea volcano. And going to be the station here, UWE. Here is the last 2 days. Obviously noticeable deflation here. Not a huge drop off, but it's definitely leveled out here slightly and dropping. The overall trend, though, if you look at that, has been elevated since the halting of the eruption stopped back around the, it was about the 13th, 14th here of September. So, not for sure what's going on specifically. I don't have any insight into what's going on below the ground. I mean, we can look at these little scenarios of activity there across the Izu Trench and the elevated activity here across Kilauea volcano, how they picked up together and they decreased together. Thousands of miles away. Is it just a coincidence? I don't know. Definitely an interesting little pattern here that that happened here over the past few days between those two. As far as earthquake activity goes, still seeing some. These are all earthquakes around the Kilauea volcano. But really not seeing any major fluid movement, potentially right around here, a little bit here, but no major magma movement that I can see. Maybe just a little pause. But it's kind of interesting, though, how it kicked up all of a sudden. All right, let's see what else we got here, folks. Anything major going on? I think that's about it. There's the earthquake in Nepal from last night. Atlantic Ocean pretty calm. It's hard to say exactly what's going to happen here next. We just, when you got all this large scale activity taking place all over the place, it's a guessing game. I would have never thought there'd be some type of earthquake like this up here in Afghanistan. Ways away from the plate boundary, ways away from the subduction zone. Historical data tells us that, this is like the first 6-pointer, at least as far as, their records go, out here specifically in this area of Afghanistan. Papua New Guinea was kind of on that quiet zone, or close to the edge of the quiet zone. I said to watch this area here potentially for some movement overnight. Well, that really ramped up here at the edge. of it overnight indeed. All right, let's check out space weather, see what we have here. Far as that almost looks like the state of California there on that sun. We'll check it out here a little bit. Right after my update this morning, there was an M flare, and literally looking at the graphs, I did not see anything capable of producing an M flare. So I'm kind of curious to see exactly where that kicked off from. C flares. This was earlier this morning. I don't think he mentioned anything about the M flare that kicked off. Let's check it out here real quick and see what we have. Here's a movie of it. Let's see if we can find a bright feature. Looks like it may have been this area right around here. Potentially. And that was probably about the only one that showed any type of, any type of structure in terms of complexity out here. I really don't think it came from any of these other ones. I'd be surprised if it did, but I'm not 100% certain exactly where that came from. No mention of it here. It wasn't a strong. Well, let's see, what was it? An M 1.7 or so. Looks like, so not quite that threshold in order to be up here on the chart. Kevin keeps it M flares events M2 and above over the past 48 hours, so no mention of it. Right now, the flare threat level: C flare at 90% chance, M flare at 35%, X flare around 1%. Not a big deal. There's this coronal hole. It almost looks like California, right? Drawn down. Here could be the Bay Area. Swing down to Southern California. It's even got a boot. It kind of looks like a boot. I don't know. I may have been inhaling too much of that sulfur smell in the air up there at Mount Lassen. If you've been up there at any volcano, active volcano, you'll know what I mean. But I will post that short up here to the channel before I head to bed. Either way, coronal hole facing us. The most recent imagery right here is showing that it's pretty much close to being in position here. We'll see if this thing kicks up any auroras, solar storms here in the coming days, because it is pretty much lined up with this. It should shoot off some high-speed solar wind, solar particles in our direction that could amplify the conditions here in the 3-day geomagnetic forecast. For now, things look, well, it's supposed to be calm. Looks like a little bit of auroras up there at the higher polar regions, I should say. More specifically on the northern polar region. Nothing big, just a looks like a small percentage. I've seen auroras way up there. Let's see what else. I think that's about it, folks. I am tired, man. A hike can get to you, let me tell you, but it's good for you, right? You got to stay active. Definitely feel good. I'm hoping I'll sleep good tonight, because I don't sleep very well at night. I don't know what it is. It's just been with me for many, many years. All right. Moving on, past sleep disorders. We'll go through the Assemble here and see what we got for long-term models. Man, it was about 65 up there at Mount Lassen today when we were hiking. Perfect. Mid-90s in the Sacramento Valley. I'm glad I wasn't here to experience that, but tomorrow's going to be our last hot day before some cooler weather comes into the West Coast right there, bringing with it a chance of showers on Monday and Tuesday. Temperatures dropping down into the 70s. It looks like that trough here is going to deepen slightly around Oregon and Washington, bringing with it chances of rainfall and much cooler temperatures. Combining hands out here, it looks like, with this massive low pressure out here along the east. It's been a while since we've seen a large area of troughing going on here across the entire country. And that kind of dissipates for a little bit. Another low pressure building in here around mid-October. Same for the east here. We got high pressure wanting to ridge in. Let's see what happens. Hopefully that stays away. I'm not a big fan of that. Hoping that changes. It is a ways out. That's a good almost 10 days out or so. But it looks like the cooler weather pattern here coming up for the West Coast is going to kick in for a good portion of next week, it looks like. So I'm definitely happy with that. As far as rainfall totals go, let's see here. Looks like a developing trough of low pressure out here. That's going to, of course, kick up along the West Coast. Not worried about rain, but I want to see what's going on here for the rainfall next 5-10 days or so. Pacific Northwest going to get quite a bit of rain. Goodness, here in Chico, oh man, we're lucky. Well, that's being very generous if that's what we get. 0.3 of an inch of rain, maybe around there, maybe a little bit less in certain areas. Up along the coast here, Northern California, a couple inches of rain. They always get some heavy-duty rain. Up here in Seattle, around these beautiful green lush forest areas, 10 inches of rain in the next 10 days, almost 9 inches or so. Goodness, get some heavy-duty precipitation going on there. All right, and then a little bit of precip out here across the areas of the eastern portion of the country, and out here as well, looks like, around certain areas of the Midwest. It looks good. They definitely need some rain. All right, folks, I am just tired. I feel like I'm going to fall asleep right now, so I got to go upload this video, and then I'll upload that short. Look for it, Mount Lassen. I try to go up there a couple times a year. It's beautiful up there. Well, certain areas of the park are beautiful. Quite a bit of it burnt. I think that was in the Dixie Fire a couple years back. So a good portion of Mount Lassen National Park is just dead trees. Almost looks like just sticks out there. Pretty sad to see it because it was beautiful. There's still some areas of it that's fairly green, but it's going to take a long time for it to be back to how it was. All right, guys, have a good one. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later at 2.6 out in the oil fields outside of Pecos, Texas. Have a good one. Catch you guys back here tomorrow sometime. Enjoy your Saturday night.